user base, then you can think about how to commercialize on this user base. And the VC will be actually more willing to invest in these platforms. So that's why in the early stage, these platforms, they basically invest a lot, right, into their operations, but the revenue side looks pretty flimsy, right? But in the long term, hopefully they'll be able to find a viable revenue model, either from advertisement, for example, or they can build strong IPs and try to sell related products, right? That's the other way out. Right?
As of now, it's actually really difficult to get internet users to pay. I mean, we're so used to getting stuff for free these days. How can they actually make their content so attractive so people will be willing to pay something to view something?
Right. No, I think, Tracy, you actually mentioned a very good point, because, different comic platforms, I mean, there's so many out there, and they offer more or less very similar products, right? And the user stickiness is actually very low. So if you want to stand out, win this market, you really have to work hard on the content, which is to create an IP that's attractive enough and that can last long enough, right? And I think that's very key. If you look at like the video streaming industries, Youku, PPS, for example, for a very long time they offer their movies and their productions for free as well. So I mean, I still have free access to these two platforms. So and people get used to that. But later on, if what I find out is if they offer movies that are substantially different, meaning content that are substantially different from their competitors, as a consumer, I am actually willing to pay a monthly fee to subscribe to their platform. But the key here is, I as a consumer, I have to feel like my money is it's worth it. Exactly, right. There are movies that I really want to watch, or episodes, or series of TV series, shows I really like. Then I'm willing to pay a fee. Right? If the contents are similar, then I'll obviously switch to the free platform. Right?
They always say the content is king here. You really have to provide good content for people to actually open up their pocket and pay you something, right? In the video, both the female entrepreneurs said that comics apps are seeking to go global. I think there are a lot of advantages could be said about doing so. And what's your take on that? And then also, a lot of people even say that this is the only way for these apps to actually make money. What do you think?
Globalization. This seems to be a buzzword nowadays, especially after the Belt and Road Initiative. Everybody in China now talks about Chinese companies have to tap into the international market. We have to go out. It used to be the other way around, right? Foreign companies are doing business in China or with Chinese companies, but now it's the other way around. I think internet companies, like internet comics platforms, they have a natural advantage to go out because they operate online, which means the physical entry barrier into other countries is very low.
Non-existent,
it's non-existent, right? Because if you reside in the U.S., you can still download their apps within a few clicks away. So the physical entry barrier is very low. You don't have to worry about inventory. You don't have to worry about operating a physical location in the United States to serve your U.S. customers.
It's purely the flow of information here.
Exactly.
So it's much easier.
Exactly. But on the flip side, I think there's also a challenge, especially for comics, but because again, comics is culture, right? So what you're doing is essentially you're trying to export national culture to other countries who perhaps know little about China, right? And you have to educate them, right? That whole cultural exporting, it takes time, right? And our own IPs, for example, Sun Wukong, right?
Or the Monkey King. Yeah, it took a long time.
Right, for foreigners to understand, why is Monkey King behave this way or that way, and they interpret it different ways, right? So unless you really understand the local culture, you understand what viewers want, right?
So it's the same thing. It's going to take a long time.
Right. So I think the intangible entry barrier is actually very high for this particular business.
You have to first get American audience to be interested in Chinese culture, to be interested in Chinese history, and then you can introduce a lot of stories that's related to the culture and history. But let me ask you this: other than the intangible, like you said, cultural differences, what are some other entry barriers that these apps could face when trying to go global?
One is, I think, eventually, so at the start, you can operate everything within China, and you can access your audience in the U.S. But eventually you have to do a lot of localization, right? And which means you do have to have a local team who operates in the U.S. and who serve the U.S. market, and that can be actually quite challenging.
Well, thank you so much for your insights today, Professor Jia.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Tracy.
And that concludes this edition of New Money on CGTN. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you at the same time.